Thank you, dear Elvira. It will be hard to call after Elvira. She's really great. Today I will present you the target groups and the methodology of our policy paper. So I will start with the targets group that we address to. First, there is the institution of the European Union dealing with the public administration reform in Bosnia and Herzegovina, but also civil servant at all levels of government in our country. Also, the target groups are, of course, political parties that are responsible for making decisions and laws at all levels of government in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Methodology that we use during writing and researching on our policy paper are based on the documentary reviews. We use a lot of documents. As Denisa said earlier, we read a lot, guidelines, strategies, acts, laws. For example, we use a lot of information from Sigma Monitoring Report on Bosnia and Herzegovina 2021. Also, in our policy paper, you can find an example of the good practice from Western Balkans country, where we describe case studies from Albania, North Macedonia, Serbia, Montenegro, and Kosovo. As a group in this program, we had the chance to visit Kosovo, where we stayed 5 days and held several meetings and interviews with the representatives of the governmental institution in this country. And there we discussed about this issue and the way they write and strategic documents in this country. Also, during intra program, mobility program, we spent 2 weeks in Brčko district of Bosnia and Herzegovina, Republika Srpska, and 2 cantons, Central Canton and Zenica Doboj Canton, where we also had several meetings, interviews with the representatives of the institution on all levels. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time to present you all information and conclusion that we get, but I will kindly invite you to read our policy paper and find detailed information about these visits and every information that we get. Now, my colleague Jura will tell you some key findings and recommendations. Unfortunately, colleague Armin is not today with us, but Jura will cover this part. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Anissa. I'm going to talk about the key findings of our policy paper, and as you can see on this chart, we have different levels of governments in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and the planning documents are all defined differently. I'm going to start with the state level, and first of all, I would like to mention that state level has no institution that is exclusively in charge of planning and preparation of annual nor midterm planning. So we have several institutions which do that combined. The Directorate for Economic Planning is in charge of drafting the medium-term work plan for the Council of Ministers. The process of drafting the annual work plan is shared between the Office of the Chairman of Council of Ministers and Secretariat General of the Council of Ministers, but the drafting process is entirely the responsibility of line ministries and other institutions of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Big institution I mentioned as Secretariat General and the Office of the Chairman have no actual control over the process. They just combine the data that they do receive from the institution. And we have the Ministry of Finance, which is in charge of budget and the budget process of the drafting of annual work plans. We have the Directorate for European Integration, which deals with verifying compliance with European directives and regulations, and but we lack that central body that has power to work on verification of the content of the actual program, and there is no institution who verifies the facts that are written in that program. And that part should be improved by creating an institution of the Council of Ministers, which would actually oversee the preparation of the work program and perform a review and to be able to have justification of the activities that are actually planned in the program. And then we have the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and the Federation does have a central body which is called the Federal Institute of Development and Programming. And the difference between Federation and Bosnia and Herzegovina is the fact that Federation has a law that regulates the problem, and Bosnia and Herzegovina at state level does not have a law. It has a bylaw, several bylaws, but the entity level such as Republika Srpska and Federation do have laws which are quite similar but actually different in a way. In Republika Srpska, the institution in charge is the Secretariat General of the government, and it is the same in Brčko district, and they do have a law, but it's somewhere similar, but anyway, actually different as well. So the big thing that is a problem here is institutional cooperation, and institutional cooperation should be definitely improved. At current legal framework at the level of Bosnia and Herzegovina, planning process envisages institutional cooperation, but it should be a key factor in a successful preparation and implementation of the work program at any level of the government in Bosnia and Herzegovina. At the entity level, because we do have a central body, the planning process is better defined, and there is a central institution, so coordination is better, but it could be improved as well. And at the level of Bosnia and Herzegovina, institutional cooperation is minimal in the segment of preparation planning documents, while the documents themselves are based on the goals from the midterm work plan of the Council of Ministers, which is common to all the planning documents of Bosnia and Herzegovina. The content itself is not sufficiently controlled by the competent institutions that should give adequate and useful opinion on why and why not some activities should be contained in that program. The existence of a central institution would help in terms of centralizing the planning system into one body that could comprehensively analyze the content of planning documents. That body could seek opinions and clarifications of why any institution should put such content into that document, and the documents should be enforceable, inclusive, and clear. And if we would have such an institution, it would help coordinate the process of the EU accession it would give us a central point who would be in charge of planning reforms that has to be implemented on our EU path. But not all is bad. There is a silver lining, to say so. On the 32nd session of the Council of Ministers that was held in 2001, Council of Ministers adopted a document about the Sustainable Development Goals. What are Sustainable Development Goals? They are goals from the Agenda 2013, which is a UN agenda, which actually Bosnia and Herzegovina committed to that agenda in 2015, along with 152 states, I believe. And those Sustainable Development Goals addressed global challenges, including poverty, inequality, climate change, prosperity, peace, and justice. And they should be like community goals of the whole world. And this is the first time that we actually do have a document that all the levels of the government actually agreed upon and decided to use those goals in order to develop their own work plans. When we did our research, we checked the neighboring countries, including Serbia, North Macedonia, Albania, Montenegro, and Kosovo, which we visited, as Anissa said. And I don't want to go through every country individually because the conclusion is the same. We can conclude that not all of every country I mentioned did not yet develop good strategic planning systems nor annual planning systems, and they should as well amend current laws in place. But comparing countries of the region with Bosnia and Herzegovina, we can conclude that we are a specific country of the region because of our complexity in our system, and every country of the region, of course, is centralized. It has one government, one parliament, and it's much easier to have a decision-making body. But in Bosnia and Herzegovina, we are complex, as I said, and we should look up to those countries, for example, of good practices, but try to adjust them to the unique and complex political system with one essential starting point, which is the need of coordination on all levels of government. If the coordination of the planning process would improve with inclusion of all levels of government in the process and giving competency to one central planning body, as is done in the countries of the region, planning system would improve immensely. This would improve the progress towards the EU, would strengthen the development of policies and sector strategies in a uniform manner, and would contribute to our integration process. And now to go on to the recommendations and policy messages. The fact is that Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina and Republika Srpska have introduced regulatory framework laws on strategic planning and annual planning. The state level is the one that lacks the said law. Challenges and weaknesses do exist in quality planning documents and actual implementation across all levels of government. State levels should set up a legal framework for strategic planning and amend current legal framework defining annual and midterm planning. Creating a central institution of Bosnia and Herzegovina of the Council of Ministers that will oversee the preparation of the annual plans should be a priority for a state level. Institutional cooperation should be improved on all levels of government. A legal framework defining the process of planning should be harmonized on all levels of government, and harmonization of the process would improve the state's progress, would strengthen the development of policies and sector strategies in a uniform manner, which would contribute to our overall progress. And to end it all, I would like to read you a part of the most recent opinion of the European Commission, which was issued 12th of October this year on report of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and in a paragraph which defines public administration reform, it states that the policy-making system in Bosnia and Herzegovina remains fragmented. The legislative framework on medium-term policy planning is unevenly developed and regulated through different laws. There is no link between sectoral policy priorities and government priorities at all levels. And it says here, a legal basis on strategic planning is in place in both entities, but is missing at the state level. And there was no progress in developing methodological guidance for countrywide sectoral strategic planning, which requires harmonization of central planning document. So actually the Commission has stated that our policy message was a priority for Bosnia and Herzegovina in the future.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, good afternoon. On behalf of the Working Group 5 and my own behalf, I would like to greet you all and of course to congratulate our colleagues on the policy presentations. My name is Elvira Habota, and I would like to introduce my colleagues, Nisa Mešetović and Jure Zovko. Armin Čičić unfortunately was not able to join us. Today's presentation and the title of our policy paper is Harmonization of Planning Documents which define the work of authorities in Bosnia and Herzegovina. I just have to say that it was Jure's idea to do this topic, and as a person who works at the Council of Ministers of Bosnia and Herzegovina, he was very well aware of the importance of this issue. Of course, we as a group accepted it and supported, but he guided us through this, this policy paper, and I have to say he was the light at the end of the tunnel. Just a few things about, oh, I forgot to. Okay. This policy paper shows the problem of non-harmonized laws, regulations, or guidelines that just define the planning process and monitoring process and supporting government work at all administrative levels of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Doing this research, we found out several disputable issues, to say so, several problems, and one of them was the inconsistency of strategic planning documents, inconsistency of legal framework, to say so, at the state level, which in a certain way defines unevenness in practice and uncertainties in functioning, to say so, when it comes to these issues, which is directly addressed to civil servants involved in the process of annual and midterm planning at all levels in Bosnia and Herzegovina. The current situation shows also at the state level, entity level, and Brčko district that there are different approaches when it comes to the preparation of planning documents. Therefore, also at the entity level, we do have laws defining these issues, which are somewhat similar, and there is institution that monitors and control the policy planning. However, at the state level, there is no central institution that controls and monitors these planning processes. And other than Council of Ministers of Bosnia and Herzegovina decisions, there is no law that combines at the state level this issue. Just as a conclusion of the policy problem is lacking all these and having all these problems, of course, is decreasing state progress and is making policy issues, policy planning very much difficult if it's not done in a uniform manner, and it's just risking the whole country's development, not just in the area of European integration, but as a whole in general. When it comes to the background and context, we actually were guided by two things. The first one, of course, is the Dayton Peace Agreement and its Constitution, Annex 4. And what we, of course, were guided with is that this issue, the Annex 4, as you know, we have a huge, complex organizational structure that is divided, and its jurisdictions are divided at all levels within the entities in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Based on the BNH constitution, we on another hand, we have entities constitutions which divide certain responsibilities on the lower levels of governments, cantonal government as well. Another issue that guided us was BNH submission of its application for the European Union membership in February 2016, based on which we have European Commission issued an opinion regarding this issue, and the opinion was given in 2019 that in a certain way provided comprehensive roadmap for the necessary reforms that need to be done at the state level. So one of the 14 recommendations was public administration reform. So based on this, I will just have now Enisa Mešetović, my colleague, just to guide you through the methodology, and then, of course, Jure Zovko. And Nisa, the floor is yours.